A pleasant good evening to you all. I'm Shane Harris. And from all of us here at Shane Harris Tonight to you, welcome to spring. And welcome to March Madness time. Though there is some bad news. Our Shane Harris Tonight program is down to 2 episodes remaining, including this one and next week. Which means in early April, primarily April the 4th, you folks at home will be introduced to my own little fancy bracket called the Mayhem Tournament, where you, the folks at home, can determine the next fan art piece I get to do. And there's so much variety with my little bracket. It features well-established characters and characters you may have never heard of before if you've never watched my series at all. It's basically a March Madness without the hardwood. There you go. So, one of those contestants, and one of the few to represent Europe, is literally this episode you're watching. And also, it'll be the next episode next week, which I'll tell you about later on. This week, we are discussing the Monster Buster Club, a series with international flavor from the start. Its English cast is mostly Canadian, most notably Sam Vincent and Andrea Libman are part of the cast. By the way, Libman of My Little Pony fame, who does have a YouTube page, plays Kathy. We will get to her in a moment. While the other characters in question, Chris, Danny, and Sam, we will all get to them in just a moment. Another bit of the international flavor that you'll witness on this very series is the fact that the French produced the show. The rights holders are French. It was produced by Marathon in association with the TF1 television network, or to us Anglophones as TF1, which was basically the ABC for French viewers in Europe, for people living in France. And also, get this, the animation was done in India by a company called Crest Productions. And the animation surprisingly does hold up fine in some areas, though it may need some repolishing if you watch it in high definition through the official remasters on Zodiac's ZK Cartoons YouTube page, which you can also find all the Foot de Rue episodes I have been talking about outside of just the first few of Season 4. If you haven't done so, head to their page immediately. Anyway, how did this show come about? And how did we Americans get introduced to it via Jetix? Let's fire up our little time rewinder to 2007. The French had this crazy idea. Just another run-of-the-mill idea from out of nowhere. What happens if you have 3 kids who have the ability to take down weird science fiction kind of nonsense at their own little middle school? And thus, that plan actually worked. The show in question was still called Monster Buster Club in its pilot stage, and Marathon was still the producers. But here was the kicker. As you see here, the poster that you're looking at came from the official series that came after its debut in 2007, where 4 characters being the norm. Kathy being the surprising one because she happens to be an alien from outer space who has the ability to convert into a human. Bizarrely, in the pilot, though, that wasn't going to be the case. In the pilot stage, back in the mid-2000s, presumably 2004 or so, only 3 characters existed. Chris, Danny, and Kathy, all of whom were human. Sam never even came about. That was until much later after the pilot was presented onto the internet. Part of me says that actually having 4 characters would be a better idea. Plus, they would have much more refined animation at that point, so that was going to be obvious. And yes, they would actually get to have a proper theme song, because Noam Kanyel, yes, that one of Code Lyoko fame for us Anglophones, would perform the theme song to this very show. Which actually, in my honest opinion, is literally the best thing about it. But this series is fairly basic, fairly run-of-the-mill. It is episodic, no crazy storyline that is driven wire to wire. It's your average 11-minute dose of hilarity, violence, and your usual sci-fi shenanigans of 4 unique characters wheeling around weapons and taking down creatures from the paranormal to the abnormal. All in the name of saving their school and their little town in something that is much more hilarious and much more entertaining than most other sci-fi cartoons prior to this. And yes, I find it more entertaining than Slimer, so yeah, eat your heart out, Columbia fans. Now, how did I even come up to this show? This was a last-second decision. I was scrambling to find a few shows to fill into the Shane Harris Tonight bracket that I developed well over a year ago. And I was down to the last few. And I noticed that I've had majority of the bunch being from the US and Canada. And only Code Lyoko and Oban were the only European representatives. So I expanded my horizons a bit and did some more digging, and thus here I am with much more entries, including an Italian with Ejixis, and also a few more French shows, including Foot de Rue, plus this show right here, and next week's show, which happens to be Dude, That's My Ghost. That show will be very interesting as well. We will get to that next Friday night. And I hope you guys have studied up, because every episode of Shane Harris Tonight will help you, alongside a bit of actual, watching a film of each and every show that I talk about. It will help you get a general consensus of how you'll feel about each vote. You're the ones at hand. I'm the one who's making all the questions, and I'm not the one adding weights to any scale. So, there is no voter fraud in my little tournament. It's you with a few choices and Mother Time against you. So, that's fairly simple, but more on that when we get to the tournament breakdown in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, with this, Monster Buster Club aired from 2007 to 2009 in France, while it carried here in the US for around the same time. Its fan base is quite minuscule, unfortunately, and there is pretty decent fan art on DeviantArt, of course, while its YouTube presence is also kind of small in terms of US and Anglophone viewers, though the majority of the fans come from overseas in Europe, because What do you expect? It is a Zodiac cartoon, after all. It is a Jetix property. That means it's way more popular in Europe compared to it is over in the US. And that's always been the case. None of the less, I'm not going to describe the character's powers because that is actually part of the storyline you'll come across in the first episode. Which, by the way, I'm not spoiling for you. You're going to have to look it up yourself. But what I can do for you is, if you click on the description, you will find a link into a behind-the-scenes featurette that comes from their animation production house at Crest Productions in India, which is surprisingly in English. And I'm not kidding, because you'll actually get to see some decent animation work be done, and the English is pretty good. No ridiculous nonsense. Anyway, another behind-the-scenes thing you'll also get to see in the description box below is also the pilot to the Monster Buster Club. You'll see what I mean why I said there's only 3 characters instead of 4. You just have to click in the description and find the link that says it. But for now, I'm Shane Harris. I will see you next Friday night for the series finale of Shane Harris Tonight. And remember, Friday, April the 4th, things are gonna get interesting because the Mayhem tournament begins then, in 2 weeks' time from tonight. Till then, I'm Shane Harris. Good night.